Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics. And do you know what's special about today? It's the day when, after spending a week pretending to care about vulnerable children, the Tories and Reform UK are trying to block the Children's Wellbeing and Schools Bill, which will put a legal duty on people to report evidence of child abuse when they become aware of it. Because this is who they are. And I'd like to go over some of the things you may want to be aware of, maybe in conversations you could have with people who get their ideas from the Daily Mail. But first, for daily political commentary, please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out. So, as predicted, Kemi Badenoch continued to try to leverage political capital from Elon Musk's disinformation drive on grooming gangs at PMQs today. But the consequence of her intentions, as Starmer fired back, is to attempt to block the government from bringing in changes that will protect victims now. As he said, we know what needs to be done. More specifically, Labour are putting some child protection legislation through Parliament today, and the Conservatives are trying to present an amendment. Now, the amendment is for another inquiry into grooming gangs. Now, people who read too much of the Mail or Musk may think, well, what's the problem with that? Well, as Bridget Phillipson explained in the media round today, where I have to say she was actually really good, it would block the government from actually bringing in measures to protect children now. See, when you have an inquiry underway, can't really do anything until it's over. As I said yesterday, this is sometimes why governments hold spurious inquiries, so that they have an excuse for not doing anything. Sorry, can't do anything just yet, or even talk about it really. Inquiry underway, you know. So this amendment of the Conservatives, if passed, would destroy the entire bill. And the bill does a few things, including putting a legal duty on professionals to report suspicions of child abuse. Not only did the Tories not introduce that legislation themselves after being in power for well over a decade after the grooming gang scandal was known about, but they're now trying to stop the Labour government introducing these laws. How many times do you see in the paper of some case of child abuse? And it's always the same, isn't it? Oh, the signs were there, they weren't picked up. The signs were there, they weren't picked up. Why aren't they being picked up? Now the government are trying to make sure that they do get picked up. Another inquiry would also block Labour's efforts to introduce the 20 recommendations from the J inquiry, which reported 2 years ago. The Conservatives insist that they were intending to implement 19 of the recommendations themselves, but not a single one was implemented in the year and a half that remained in government. And now they're trying to stop Labour, who I think have said they're going to implement all of them. I mean, some other things worth pointing out, should you find yourself in conversation with those the Tories are cynically targeting with their lies. So the Tories, Musk, Reform UK, basically those aligned with the far right, they're trying to paint Keir Starmer and Jess Phillips as protecting the abusers, when their history shows the opposite. The reason the grooming gang scandal blew up in the first down was down, in no small part, to Keir Starmer. He's the one who ordered the prosecutions and then made changes at the CPS to make sure more prosecutions followed. One of the big changes he made was that the victims should be believed. Starmer didn't cover anything up. He's the one who broke the whole thing open. At the time, there was a nasty habit of assuming the victims, who were of course young, were just acting out of revenge or a need for attention. That was what you saw in the papers all the time. Starmer changed that. Treat the victims as victims who are telling the truth, and the charge and conviction rate increased. In fact, the Times yesterday published an article referencing Andrew Norfolk. Now, who is he? Well, here's the journalist who broke the story of the grooming gangs to the nation. He is the reason the nation became aware of it. You might say he's the sort of Alan Bates of the grooming gang scandal. He has attacked the disinformation currently swirling around online and made clear that it was Starmer who at the time took the issue seriously, met up with him and changed the rules to massively increase the number of convictions. As for Jess Phillips, actual grooming gang victim survivors have come out to defend her. Why? Because she has been pushing for improvements to better protect women and girls for years. Indeed, one of the biggest voices in Parliament for it. Before becoming an MP, she actually ran refuges for women and children escaping domestic violence. Far from what that doped up gobshite Elon Musk thinks, Keir Starmer and Jess Phillips are two people who have a proven track record in the fight against abusers. Whatever people may think of some other aspects of their politics, They are two of the very best people to actually take the fight to abusers. Elon Musk, on the other hand, spent tens of billions buying Twitter and additional hundreds of millions of dollars to get a rapist elected president and a suspected child rapist elected attorney general. The only reason the suspected child rapist failed to get the nod to become attorney general for Trump is because this was too much even for some Republicans in Congress. These are the facts of the matter. Keir Starmer and Jess Phillips have helped the victims of rape. Elon Musk has helped the rapists. Then we could come to the issue of the reason the far right give for wanting another inquiry. I mean, they would prefer it if the people they're trying to con didn't actually know we've already had one. So I suppose the first thing to mention to anyone that you may come across is you do know we've already had an inquiry. It's come up with recommendations. Because it's way easier to persuade people that Labour are up to no good if they don't actually realise we've had an inquiry. After all, of course there should have been an inquiry into grooming gangs. It was a dreadful scandal that was not going to go away without government action. But there was an inquiry. It produced recommendations and Labour are now implementing after the Tories failed to do so. So why do they claim there should be another inquiry? They say that the original one looked at other issues as well surrounding the sexual exploitation of children. And you go, well, that's good, isn't it? We don't really want children being sexually exploited at all, do we? I mean, you would think so. But that's not good enough for the far right. And why not? Because they want an inquiry, and they've been open about this. At least one Reform UK has explicitly said this. They want an inquiry that focuses entirely on the rape of white girls by non-white men, preferably Muslim men. They've said that. They want an inquiry that only focuses on that section in order to stoke their Islamophobia. They didn't say the last bit. The problem for them with the existing inquiry is that it looked at the organised sexual exploitation of all kinds, which meant that the stats showed that by far and away the biggest problem are white British rapists. But the inquiry did also cover the Asian grooming gangs, which kicks off the scandal nationally. So it's not like it missed it out or even downplayed it. As for the Tories, they are particularly shameless, because this is so obviously just an attempt to score political points. And they don't care how many victims they create to make it happen. Because until we put measures in place to prevent it happening in the future, there are going to be more victims. Remember, the grooming gang scandal came to national attention in 2011, which means it had been going on before then, but that's when the public knew about it. While Keir Starmer was one of the key figures exposing it all and going after the abusers, what was the Conservative government doing? Well, it took them 4 years to even order an inquiry. But they did eventually order an inquiry, so OK. That inquiry took 7 years because it was a big one. OK, you can't rush an inquiry. But that still meant 11 years after the scandal came to national attention where the Conservative government did nothing to make future crimes less likely. But 2 years ago, they had the results of that inquiry. They could now do something about it. So what did they do? Nothing. Now, they're arguing for a new inquiry so we can have another decade of doing nothing. But if they think the first inquiry was no good, why didn't they launch another one themselves? And also, why do they think that the inquiry they ordered, which took 7 years and cost £200 million, was no good? See, they haven't answered that question as far as I can tell. But given that they're claiming that they did intend to implement the majority of the recommendations, even though they never actually managed any of them, that suggests they did think the inquiry did its job. Otherwise, why would you want to implement the recommendations? So why are they now changing their tune? Why in government did they say, oh, this inquiry, brilliant. Yeah, we'll do a load of this at some point, maybe in the future. Who knows? Why do they now that they're not in government want to cancel that inquiry and start a new one? Why do they want to delay action by another 7 years? No, Richard Phillipson had it dead right. The Tories are doing this for political purposes. I don't think they actually want to help the abusers, by the way. They just don't care enough about the victims to let Labour get on with legislating to protect them. Winning a few grubby votes is more important than the countless children at risk of sexual exploitation. You would think it would be the interests of the Conservatives to actually be with Labour on this one to help expose the lies at the heart of Reform UK, the party that's taken so many of their votes. But no, they think it's a better idea to make Nigel Farage look like he's a leader on this. As Phillipson said of the Tories, I thought there was a limit to how far they would sink and I was wrong. And this also speaks to me about how the Conservative Party is now. It's not like the Conservative Party the last time they were in government. Like last time, I felt they just didn't understand what they were doing to a lot of people. I didn't think they were performatively cruel. I think more accidentally so. Still, reason enough not to allow them to run a country. But now the party knows it's evil and have made peace with that. This is why, as I've discussed recently, I think there's a very real prospect of Canada repeating itself here, where their original Conservatives merged with their Reform Party to produce a much nastier party. The more time goes on, the more the Conservatives look like Reform UK, and therefore the more it will make sense for them to just merge if they're basically going to be the same thing. You know, whatever morals the Conservatives once had have been set in concrete and thrown into the deepest river they could find. Fortunately, Labour's majority is big enough to face this down, so I'm not going to wait until the results of the vote. I'm quite sure Labour will win it. The bigger problem is, will the public understand that the government are legislating to take action against rapists and protect victims, and the Tories are trying to block that? Only if we tell them, because they're not going to hear it in the Tory media or the most amplified accounts on social media. Because with Zuckerberg towing the MAGA line now, expect Facebook, Instagram and Threads, if you're unfortunate enough to use that, to get just as bad as Twitter before long. Which reminds me, let us finish off with a question Ed Davey had about foreign oligarchs like Musk buying British politics. It allowed Starmer to have some fun at Farage's expense, who didn't actually seem to mind.
While the honourable member for Clacton may miss out on his big allowance from Elon Musk, the spectre of the richest man in the world trying to buy a British political party should give us all pause for thought. And after years of the Conservatives taking millions in pounds of Russian money, will the Prime Minister now work with us to bring in long overdue reforms of party funding so that power in this country lies with the voters and not wealthy overseas oligarchs?
I think we all had a smile on Sunday when the honourable member said how cool it was to have the support of Musk, only for Musk to say he should be removed. Just a few hours later, that's the rough and tough of politics. And of course, we're looking at the question of funding more generally.
In fact, judging by the mirth of the Reform MPs, it doesn't look like Farage is all that bothered about having his pants pulled down by Musk at the weekend. But there we are. Those are my thoughts. Let me know yours in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, please click the like button and subscribe for further content. If you'd like to support the channel further, you can click the join button for memberships. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.